Gemar Chatima Tova. I was recently at a birthday party where I met a couple who had met in college. I met my wife in college too. It was in a class, I shared. One partner of the couple replied that that's so wonderful, to which I reflected, it could have been, but it wasn't wonderful actually. Melissa and I met in a class called Anti-Semitism in Historical Perspective. Whenever I tell people that that's our meet cute story, there's always an awkward pause because there's nothing romantic or cute about anti-Semitism. There isn't really anything to say after that at all. And I pause because I remember that class well, and the different ways Jews have been persecuted throughout the years with desecrations of our religious buildings and burning of our books, with claims about our penchant for power and greed, with accusations of disloyalty and deicide and blood libels and scapegoating, exiling and pogroms and genocide, and perpetuating myths like Mein Kampf, the Second Vatican, the Protocols of the Elders of Zion, and so many more proclamations and statutes and policies and decrees that persecuted Jews. We studied it for an entire college semester, and trust me when I say dayenu, it was enough. And in recent years, again this past year, incidents of anti-Semitism have risen, and they have spiked since October 7th. According to CNN, over 10,000 anti-Semitic incidents have occurred between October 7th, 2023 and September 2024. And that's up from over 3,300 incidents the year prior, which was a year already reflecting the rise in hate-motivated acts of recent times. In my role as co-chair of the Los Angeles District Attorney George Gascon's Interfaith Advisory Board, I have stood numerous times at his office as he announced indictments of people who have attacked synagogues and Jews on the street of Los Angeles, and that is only one city. When reporters ask me if anti-Semitism has been on the rise in the past few years or since October 7th, the answer is simply yes to both, and it is awful. The situation is forcing grueling decisions. Do I send my kids to Jewish day school where they will be targets, but they will have security, or to public school where they don't have security? Do I put a mezuzah on my house or wear my Jewish star necklace in public, or do I closet myself to some extent? How safe am I? Is my family? Is my community? And I extend the question not only to my fellow US-based Reformed Jews, I extend that question to those in other denominations and those in other countries, including our entire Keeping It Sacred community that's online, the entire global Jewish community, to those in other countries, including Israel. And I extend that question to members of everyone around the world. My French Jewish families community endured a recent attack at a synagogue and beatings in the street, including the beating of an 88-year-old woman and other acts of anti-Semitism. My family in Israel are facing air raid sirens indicating missiles falling and fires starting in forests near their houses from the falling, burning shrapnel. Stabbings and attacks in public markets. I have family members conscripted for service in the IDF, and they've been handed Uzis and boots and made to follow orders. And they're only 17 years old. It's a really scary time. Half of the world's Jewish population lives in Israel, and we should care. We are all inextricably linked after all. And their leaders' policies are atrocious, and they know it. At least 750,000 people gathered in one protest alone. That's over 10% of the entire Jewish population in Israel, in the streets of Tel Aviv one night to protest the war and actively work for a ceasefire. It seems they know how awful the strategy to keep them safe is, how causing a mass exodus of Palestinians and flattening Gaza isn't actually solving problems. It's further escalating tension in the region, and how that in turn is threatening Jewish people everywhere. We are all connected. The rabbis remind us in a midrash that we sound the shofar of the ram's horn to remind us that, like a ram, when the head is bludgeoned, the limbs feel it. And we feel it, all right. And I want to say something clearly. The fact that we are being targeted does not mean others aren't being targeted as well. We should care about every person in Israel and Palestine, regardless of their religion, ethnicity, or nationality. The rabbis say, after all, that within every individual human is a universe. The Palestinian people are on the receiving end of atrocious bombardments of bombs that cause incredible devastation, heartache, and suffering. They are denied food and healthcare, shelter, vaccine, and water, all the necessities of life. And any aid that is being let in, and it isn't a lot, is being commandeered by Hamas. This is an awful, gut-wrenching situation for all involved on every side of the border. And for those of us tender-hearted enough to feel these things, we are doubly pained and triply pained because these things are being done in our name, and quadruply pained because we have zero control over the situation. What can we do? Never before have I so viscerally understood Moses' inclination to flee Egypt and head into the wilderness of Midian. Never before have I so viscerally understood Jonah's inclination to hide in the stomach of a whale. Never before have I so viscerally understood Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai's inclination to take his son and hide in a cave for 12 years. But we know we can't do that. We can't stick our heads in the sand like an ostrich. We cannot hide from these things or pretend they're not happening, because they are. Hatred is winning because hatred is easy. Rachel Goldberg Polin, mother of murdered hostage Gersh Goldberg Polin, may his memory be a blessing, speaks about this. And believe me, she has every right to be angry and filled with hatred for the awful experience her son endured until he was finally murdered. She notices we human beings have been blessed with the gift of intellect, creativity, insight, and perception. Why are we not using it to solve global conflicts all over the world? Because doing this is hard, and it takes fortitude, imagination, grit, risk, and hope. So instead, we opt for hatred because it is so comfortable, familiar, and it is so very, very easy. Hatred is easy, and it's easy to just write everyone and everything off, but we must dig deeper and not give in. We must imagine a different future. My dear friend of interfaith studies and Muslim leader, Dr. Najiba Saeed, asks us to ask, where do we see each other in each other's futures? In other words, what is the world we're working for? What will ensure true peace? What is the best way to end hatred in the region and on earth? And the answer is that I always ask myself these questions, and these answers always lead me back to education and equitable policies. And policies that work, as my friend Dr. Melina Abdullah says, to ensure a world where everyone has what they need and most of what they want. Won't that be enough for us? How can we get there? In this new year, it's going to take creativity and strategy and influence. It's going to take movement building and working on building coalitions across perceived divides. It's going to take all of our best collective efforts to amplify and motivate and make change. Each of us has access to make change in our own ways. Each time I speak with a church group, I remember the reflection of a minister friend of mine who told me once before I came to talk at his church, "Rabbi, your presentation to my congregation is a great way to curb anti-Semitism." That took my breath away. And then I realized he was probably right. Well, of course he was right because he knows his own people. And if proximity is a way to disarm hatred, he is absolutely right. So I have been going out to speak to church groups and mosques and government groups and corporations and schools to provide that kind of education and example and representation and understanding. I have been writing articles and entries in books, in my own book about interfaith understanding. I have been talking with people about faith and our rituals and customs and traditions at social events and in coffee shops and in grocery stores and anywhere it comes up. And it does come up because people are unsettled about what's going on and they're eager to learn more. Each of you in your places, whether you're Jewish or not, can promote understanding, can promote more truth about the multivocality of the Jewish people, about the importance to not judge what you deem the worst of us against the best of others, about the relative lack of power the Jewish establishment has compared to Christian nationalists, white supremacists, the military-industrial complex, and capitalist economies that promote great atrocities being done in the name of Jewish folks around the world. I'm concerned that if one candidate loses the election, he will blame the Jews. He has already said to a conference on anti-Semitism, the Jews will bear a lot of responsibility if that happens. And I am concerned about that candidate winning the election. There's no winning here. It is not a good time for us. But we're not alone, I think. Under the threats that we face, we must always remember to keep one another safe, to help one another find refuge and shelter, emotional, mental, and spiritual shelter from all that swirls around us. Actually, I know we are not alone. Every time there's an anti-Semitic act, my colleagues call me. And you should know that. Colleagues call on us, the Keeping It Sacred community. Colleagues from all faiths and cultures. Colleagues who know that their integrity rests on their action when people are targeted. Colleagues who also know that we are each inextricably linked. Colleagues who know that our safety depends on one another's. Colleagues who affirm their commitment to our well-being and who are there at the ready to help. Over the years, I've gotten texts and phone calls and offers of support. After the shooting at the Tree of Life Synagogue, within 24 hours, I easily assembled hundreds of people in my network and in churches who are our allies to stand together against hate. After the shooting at the synagogue in Colleyville, Texas, a minister friend of mine donated money to my discretionary fund here in California just to offset hate with love. After October 7th, I had several clergy from various denominations show up to our healing circle every Thursday. They showed up to bear witness to our pain and support our process of coming to terms with what happened. And I counted 24 clergy and leaders from various faith traditions, 24, extend their support to me and to our entire global Keeping It Sacred community in texts, calls, emails, and visits. You should know that. We are not alone. We have sung and cried and hugged it out, and we show up when others are targeted too. That's an important part of the equation. So whatever we have yet to face and whatever we're facing now, we know we are not alone, and those in our circle are not alone because of us as well. We have fought against bigotry in all of its ugly forms, and our community is standing with us. May we be brave together. May we be courageous and imaginative and strategic together. May we always work together. And may this year ahead shift the quality of our work from the necessity of working against hate to a turn to work for a shared flourishing. Amen.